So,
We did a meditation this evening.
yeah, musical meditation. Um, and it had a method to the madness that, well, the logic was totally clear, but it was a non-music school progression. It felt simpler and more direct than any sort of music curriculum, because it didn't have anything to do with historical references, for example. It was just, move this around in these keys and relate in this particular way, and it was simple and effective. Yeah.
Also necessary under the conditions, which is the most important thing. So was it something the conditions warranted? Obviously, critically so. But nobody knew that as such.
Yeah.
Until it happened.
And it's good to play with particular pressures too, even if they are simple ones. That added pressure can be very clarifying.
Revealing.
Yeah.
Exposing. Yeah. Some much needed exposure. Yeah. So in a situation like that, if you have musical assumptions, they can be defied. See? They can be thrown back in your face. Say, really? Is that so? Yeah. The mind works differently. There's a mind approach, and then there's a no-mind approach to what it is according to, let's say, the wisdom from here. Comment?
Yeah, and it's refreshing to approach musical practice, basic structured musical practice to do with changes and listening and responding and those types of things from a less heady space.
Yeah, don't believe it. Don't believe it. Space.
And where the results speak for themselves on the spot.
As they should. It's called good practice. Not knowing what's coming next. It's good practice. We're jumping straight into it. So what did you discover mostly this evening for yourself?
They're difficult to put into words. Subtle say, or not so subtle nudges in particular directions. Um, to describe one of them would be to say that I can be more complete in certain situations, and more, let's say, locked in, more communicative, more fused with another player.
More present.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when the demand is to be absolutely present.
Mm-hmm.
So that every pulse of your drum kit, right, has catastrophic implications if you're listening properly. If you're not, who cares?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 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 And relative to the musical side of it, we want to call it that, there's this understood question. Is that it? Is this it? Really? Says who? Well, to counter the complacency sometimes arises in a musician who's coming from an assumed level of knowledge. Well, limitation, self-conscious limitation. Where when they're asked to do something, the facial expression is, really? Me? Me do that? Comment.
Yeah.
Why not?
Right.
Comment on that.
Yeah.
So it's not about the you playing, as referred to earlier in the previous discussion. Who's playing?
Right.
From where? And for what? Comment.
Yeah. Right.
You got to hear this individual grow right before your eyes. You commented on it.
For sure. Yeah. It was impressive.
Transformation.
Yeah. Yeah. To really have a good crack at some free playing, some communicative, alive free playing.
It's free, but let's call it properly guided playing.
Sure.
Right.
Rubato.
Yeah.
Strong.
Yeah, for the rising. See? Not really for the playing, but for the rising. Yeah, that can come from a certain level of direction. See? Which is the whole point of it.
Yeah.
See? It's also the point of life. What is the point of life if not to rise? See? And know that rising for real. Beyond yourself. Limitation. To the contrary. Comment. And so then it's really the flow, say, and where that carries the people, say. Mm. And that's the difference here. Is there a flow here? If I'm leading the band, is there a flow? Is there something to listen to or not?
Mm.
The players who usually come to accompany what it is or play for themselves are usually with it, with all their heart and soul, I guess you might say.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's rarely a conversation about what it is in the context of that kind of process. If we're talking about newcomers to the stage or beginners, then of course there may be more questions, because there may be more guidance necessary for the individual to be more in the flow of what it is that happens when it happens. So, in other words, some people need to know how free they can be, how structural they need to be, and so on. In the beginning. Comment now. So this is a classroom situation. So you could call it a conversation.
Yeah.
An informational conversation. Basic guidelines and some results.
Yeah.
Feedback and so on. So the idea of the master seeing the master in everybody means the master knows what to put on people. And if we're talking about the musician who sees the musician and others, and the musician that in this case is maybe at the master level, is going to know how much a person can handle or not. And as a result of realizing the difference, there's very little conflict. And as a result, little conflict, very little analysis. It's more flow. And what I'm talking about is the flow is real at a level, let's say, above the self and thought levels. It's there to be felt and recognized and cognized and theoretically considered and analyzed and made into an issue or something like that. Problem or not. Solution maybe. In other words, the flow as such is self-directing. And that is true with the musicians I've had the privilege to play with in the earlier days, like Rashid Ali and Pharoah Sanders, McCoy Tyner, Robbie Coltrane, and even Elvin Jones, where there's more understanding going on and conversation about music. And openness to whatever that turns out to be in terms of form or structure or direction. Comment?
Yeah. And I assume also clarity, okayness. If it needs to be, then it will definitely be, and it will be very clear.
And that also depends on who's playing what. I never had a problem playing with any of these men. They may have had a problem playing, but I didn't have a problem playing with them. Easy as pie, straightforward. Coming.
Yeah. Great.
free playing in the way that it is exercised here. We call it free playing, but I'm not sure that meets everybody else's understanding of it. It's not about playing what you know. And furthermore, and more deeply, it's not about playing what you don't know. It's maybe more what you don't know. And maybe more in terms of what you don't know you can do once you get out of your way. So.
Yeah. When you mentioned that earlier, that was a very strong and poignant moment. Because in the past, when we've played, those moments where I was what seemed like totally free of my own processes and the mechanics, all of my facility from years of practice and training and stuff were just free to be used by the moment. Those were the most kind of soaring and luminous playing moments.
You mean like the wind in the sails?
Yeah. But there's no boat. It's just sails.
Maybe not even sails. No wind, no sails.
Yeah.
But it's like that.
It's
Soaring, flying, yes. Rising.
Yeah. And that is beyond. I mean, that's above. That's gone. And when the situation both demands and supports that, that is special.
What does that mean?
Well, that means a lot of things. One is that I wish, heart wish that there was more of this music out there. There was more of this playing out there. There was more of this sort of joy and freedom expressed through sound.
Right, that this was more the norm.
Yeah.
It's a noble wish, but this is about a certain level of karma, and a certain level of karma-lessness that justifies this kind of music being in the world at this time as needed. Not as preferred, but as needed. And I dare say needed for the few who need this kind of vision into the cosmic field of sound awareness relative to musical culturing, but not defined by that culturing.
Because in a way, in our community, our culture, musicians are leaders. I mean, we have Eminem taking a stand against Trump, and that being a big
Well, they
deal.
can be leaders. Well, just because you're a player doesn't make you a leader. Just because you have a group behind you,
Right.
What kind of leader are you?
Yeah.
It's the average band leader. So to take a stand, as Stevie Wonder does, and a few of the stronger, more confident and secure individuals will take a stand. They know that their music is given to right the things that are obvious wrongs. That means you have to take a stand. Come in.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that there is this music is a great start. And that there is a need for this music, that there are beings who seek it out and who gather around it and who participate in their way. It's beautiful. And that it is not mainstream is probably part of its function.
Probably.
It's like you said, it's almost secret.
Well, because it's so hard to understand, it may be considered secret, but not. It's not secret. It's not hidden.
Right.
But it's difficult to understand. So, right. Yeah. So it's kind of like a higher form of logic, not taught in schools or even commonly speaking. It's not taught. And it doesn't make it special or better, but it means it has a level. That requires your understanding to get more out of it.
Yeah. And a high level of musical proficiency and intensity
That helps.
to
Virtuosity.
get near it, yeah.
Virtuosity, yeah. To have playing access, you need some virtuosity.
Yeah.
Well, at least this stuff, yeah. It's played here. We can say extreme mastery, maybe, for some. Again, it's not about what you can learn and know. See? It's more or less what you dare to expose yourself to beyond what you know. Beyond what you are and have been made into. Far beyond any of that. See? And from there you may have access to the true you. See? After all of your lifetime.
At last.
At first. If you don't mind.
Perfect.
Okay. I demand that we play deeper. Because we can. Life demands that we be deeper. Because it is. Life at the extremes of consciousness is unconsciousness. And superconsciousness. And sandwiched between those two extremes is ordinary consciousness. Human consciousness. Unenlightenment consciousness. And suffering. So the playing itself should not be about suffering, and unfortunately it is for most, as much as liberating suffering. Because we can. And that's what it's for. Which is to take what you call your suffering and experience that as such, and express it in a higher form, and that would be through sound and maybe music. Higher music, not just ordinary, good music, but higher music. Whatever you can imagine that to be, beyond your self-thought, mind, and world. So the demand is to be deeper, or deepness itself, because we can be and we are deepness itself. Always deepness itself. Only deepness itself.